It's 1997. Apple, the company that once revolutionized personal computing, is teetering on the edge of collapse. Sales are plummeting, and the company is bleeding cash at an alarming rate, millions of dollars vanishing every month. Their stock price down to just $4 from a peak of $30. Headlines everywhere are saying the same thing. Apple is dying. But how did it come to this? And how did this company, once on life support, manage to climb back and become the most valuable brand in the world? Apple wasn't always the technology giant we know today. It started in 1976 with two guys in a garage, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. They were not attempting to create a money-making machine valued at $1 trillion. They simply wanted to make a personal computer. The Apple I, though primitive by today's standards, was revolutionary. It made computing accessible to the common people, and that was it. Apple was in the game. In 1977, Apple's second big hit landed. The Apple II was aimed at a wider audience than hobbyists and proved to be commercially viable. Schools, districts, houses, and enterprises started to embrace the new concept of personal computers. The future of Apple seemed limitless. Then came the year 1984. The world of computing was about to change forever, this time with the introduction of Macintosh. With its graphical interface and innovative design, Apple now positioned itself as a brand with creativity and forward-thinking technology. The 1984 Super Bowl ad, directed by Ridley Scott, further cemented Apple's image as a rebel who is shaking up the industry and challenging the status quo. People perceived Apple as the underdog, the little guy fighting against the big wolves like IBM. But the heroic tale of this little guy was not going to be a bed of roses. As of the late 1980s, Apple was in the process of rapid growth, but cracks were beginning to appear. Steve Jobs, who was known for his obsessive perfectionism, did not see eye to eye with then Apple CEO John Sculley, whom Jobs had personally hired from Pepsi. For the first time, the tension was so strong that it boiled over, and Jobs was removed from the company he co-founded in 1985. It's like having the heart ripped out of a body. Could Apple even survive without Jobs? For some time, Apple did manage, but it was not long before it started falling apart. Apple became rudderless and without direction. They began manufacturing uninteresting devices. Does anyone remember Newton? Yeah, most people don't. It was supposed to be a groundbreaking personal digital assistant, but ended up being a flop. The 1990s was the worst period for Apple. Companies such as Microsoft and Dell were enjoying great success. There were inexpensive Windows PCs, and Apple's products were regarded as overpriced and relatively bland in the sense of new ideas. Apple went from being the front-runner of the industry to being ridiculed as being a decade behind. Apple teetered on bankruptcy in the year 1997. Can you imagine it? The company that brought us the iPhone was one step away from being dead and buried. Customers were leaving in droves, and the stock was plummeting. It seemed like the end. But then something unexpected happened. As if lifted from the pages of a Hollywood science fiction story, Apple made a bold move and reinstated Jobs. In 1997, Apple bought Next, Jobs' new company, and with it, Jobs came back to the company he helped found. Once again, it wasn't an easy road. When Jobs first came, the first time after he left, Apple was in real trouble. Products were all over the place, the branding was confusing, and there was no clear vision. But Jobs had something most CEOs lacked. He had a vision and the guts to execute it. The first thing that Jobs did was streamline. He shrunk the number of products with which Apple was stuffed to only 4. He knew Apple couldn't survive by trying to be everything for everyone. Instead, he focused on doing a few things and doing them exceptionally well. The iMac was the next turning point. It came out in 1998, and it was a bold, vibrant, eye-catching computer, unlike anything else on the current market. And it was Disneyland for people. Apple was back again after a very long time, and people started to care about the company. But this was just the beginning. The year 2001 marked the beginning of something big, but it started with something small. You see, up until 2001, there were devices that played and recorded digital music, but they were huge, bulky, and rather complex. But then came the iPod. It was slim, user-friendly, and one could keep 1,000 songs in their pocket. Suddenly, Apple was more than a computer company. They were a music company. With the iPod, Apple entered a whole new world. The iTunes Store, launched in 2003, transformed how people bought music, shifting the industry from physical CDs to digital downloads. Apple wasn't just surviving anymore, they were leading. This did not stop. In 2007, Apple released the iPhone, which can be credited as one of the most important inventions in the tech industry. This was more than just a telephone, but was a mobile computing device that changed how people interacted with the world. Apple once again changed the game, but this time on a global scale. If you like the video so far, make sure to subscribe to the channel. But even with the iPhone's success, Apple wasn't immune to challenges. Over the course of time, Steve Jobs' health worsened, and in the year 2011, the tech guru passed away. To some, it appeared that this was the end of Apple. How is it possible that Apple still pursued innovations without the man who had once brought that company back to life? Tim Cook became the new chief executive officer. The company remained on the growth path with respect to revenues, but many critics started to doubt if Apple still had the flair for creativity. The products that came out after Steve Jobs' death were okay, but none so radical as the iPhone or even the iPod. Evolutionary concepts like the Apple Watch, Apple Music, and even new versions of iPhones were considered revolutionary but not groundbreaking. Some theorized that Apple's fall was unavoidable eventually, since it seemed increasingly difficult for the company to beat itself. The rivalry posed by Android, and in particular the Samsung line of devices, was growing fierce. People began wondering if this was the end of the road for Apple. This is the part where Apple once again offset the odds. The company may not be launching a breakthrough product every year, but it has been able to build a successful ecosystem. The iPhone is as popular as ever, but instead of depending on selling iPhones for profit, Apple discovered value in the services business model: Apple Music, Apple TV+, iCloud, App Store, and so forth. This shift to focusing on services rather than selling hardware proved very beneficial for Apple. It was crowned as the first ever $1 trillion company in 2018, followed by the first ever $2 trillion company in 2020. What is even more impressive is Apple's capacity to transform, evolve, and still be able to move forward. Apple, even without Steve Jobs, has still been able to figure out how to stay pertinent, creative, and profitable. And now, with the launch of augmented reality glasses and electric cars that are supposedly in the making, Apple's future has never seemed so brilliant. They've been written off previously, but time and again, Apple has proved that they are more than a technology company. They're a force that keeps pushing the limits of what's possible. From two guys in a garage to a global empire, the company's journey has been anything but smooth. Yet, through every setback, Apple has found a way to come back stronger. They've redefined industries, introduced game-changing products, and built one of the most successful tech companies the world has ever known. So, the next time you pick up your iPhone, think about how close we came to living in a world without Apple. And if Apple can come back from the brink of collapse, who says you can't? And that's the story of Apple's rise, fall, and incredible comeback. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more about companies that turned their failures into success, don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring stories like this one. Thanks for watching.